Hey guys, I'm Chris.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And we're the Film Flamers.
And it's summertime, when we always talk about blockbusters, whether or not they open in the summertime, as is the case with today's episode.
Did it?
It did not.
Oh. Well, it's kind of a blockbuster as horror goes.
Certainly a blockbuster. It made a shit ton of money.
Certainly in the mind's eye of pop culture fanaticism from the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. So we are talking about The Ring.
The Ring is a 2002 American psychological supernatural horror film directed by Gore Verbinski from a screenplay by Ehren Kruger and starring Naomi Watts, Martin Henderson, and Brian Cox. It's a remake of Hideo Nakata's 1998 film Ring, based on Koji Suzuki's 1991 novel of the same name. The plot centers on Rachel Keller, a journalist who must figure out a way to escape death after watching a cursed videotape that seemingly kills the viewer 7 days after viewing it.
Dum dum. The film is the first installment of the American Ring series and is followed by The Ring 2 from 2005 and Rings from 2017. That piece of shit. The success of The Ring paved the way for American remakes of several other Asian and Japanese horror films, including The Grudge and Dark Water.
The hauntingly beautiful film score was composed by the one and only Hans Zimmer and remains to this day his only major foray into horror.
He didn't do Ring 2?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Okay, listeners. 7 days. This is the story of a girl who cried a river and drowned the whole world. And why she looks so sad in photographs. Absolutely love her when she kills me. The Ring.
What's on the tape? Did you see it in your head? She talks to you? Towards that died on the same night? The images on the tape, they're leading us somewhere. She show you the horses? You saw it. Show me. Did you see it in your head? She shows me things. Everyone will suffer. Before you die, you see the ring. 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 You saw it.
On a rainy Seattle night, teen girls Katie and Becca are home alone having a sleepover. Since streaming hasn't been invented yet, they become bored with the TV and stream on each other.
Ew.
Becca tells Katie about an urban legend she heard about involving a cursed videotape which causes whoever watches it to die in 7 days. The tape shows a fever dream of images, and the phone rings after it's finished with your death declaration. Katie tells Becca that she'd watched it the previous weekend with her boyfriend, but plays it off as a joke. Things aren't as funny as she makes them seem, however, as she dies that night with a look of horror on her face. Katie's aunt, Rachel, played by Naomi Watts, is an investigative journalist at the Seattle newspaper because print has yet to get its death declaration. Rachel's young son, Aiden, played by David Dorfman, is a weird little crotchfoot who has seemed troubled since the death of his cousin, Katie. His teacher explains to Rachel that he'd made drawings that seemed to predict Katie's death. At Katie's funeral, Rachel is asked by her sister to investigate Katie's death, and is reluctant to do so until she learns about the mysterious tape, and that Katie's friends also died mysteriously at the same time and day that she did. Rachel heads to Shelter Mountain Inn, where Katie and co. watch the tape. There she finds the tape because video has yet to get its death declaration, and watches it in horror. A woman is prominently featured throughout the disturbing video. When the showing ends, the landline rings because landlines have yet to get their death declaration, and a voice whispers, 7 days. thus beginning her week-long march towards death. Luckily, Rachel's ex-boyfriend Noah, played by Martin Henderson, is a video analyst. She shows him the tape, and he gets a phone call, thus beginning his week-long march towards death. She makes a copy for further study, but the copy doesn't display the normal qualities of a video. Rachel can't be bothered by her impending demise, and she puts on her journalist hat and gets to work. She identifies the woman on the tape as Anna Morgan, a horse breeder who committed suicide after some of her horses drowned themselves at her home on Moesco Island. Rachel awakes the next morning to the now very familiar sound of the evil tape. Her crotch fruit has watched the tape. She screams at her crotch fruit like it will change anything, and then screams mysterious caller like it will change anything at all either. Thus, Aiden begins his week-long march towards death. She calls Noah to tell him that their son, plot twist, has watched the accursed film. With the entire family's life on the line, Rachel jumps into high journalism gear. Rachel heads to Moesco Island to speak with Anna's widower, Richard, played by Brian Cox, but takes a little time to spook a horse to death in the ferry. On the island, things get curiouser and curiouser when Rachel talks to the local doctor. The doctor explains that Anna and Richard have a child that they claimed was adopted. This little girl, Samara, played by Davy Chase, seemingly had the psychic ability to etch images onto objects and into people's minds, very similarly to what Rachel had been experiencing since watching the tape. Samara had been tormenting her parents and the horses with her talent. Meanwhile, Noah heads to the psychiatric hospital to find Anna's medical files. Instead, he finds a file on Samara with a recorded session that had disappeared after being checked out by her father, Richard. Back at the Morgan home, Rachel finds a document proving that Samara was their adopted child. She also finds the missing tape on which Samara explains her power and how she can't stop hurting people. Can't stop, won't stop. Rachel gets a bump on the noggin from Richard, who tells her that Samara was as evil as the devil's crotch fruit. Then, he takes a bath with every electrical appliance in the house. So begins his 7-second journey to death.
Thus beginning his 7-second march toward death. I like how he had a fucking, power surge. He's like, clips.
Yep. Noah joins Rachel at the Morgan house, where they find a little room in the barn where Samara was stashed away. Behind the wallpaper, they find the image of a tree etched into the wall. Rachel recognizes it as the tree near the Shelter Mountain Inn. They race to the inn and find a well underneath the floor of the cabin. Rachel is knocked into the well, and Samara's body emerges, and Rachel has a vision of how the events unfolded. Anna, tormented by Samara's ability, attempts to smother her with a plastic bag and pushes her body into the well, but Samara is still alive and watches as her mother closes the well, thus beginning Samara's week-long march towards death. Rachel and Noah arrange a proper burial. Phew, everything's fine now. After all, Rachel has survived her 7-day waiting period. Proper burials always end the horror, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. Rachel's own creepy crotch fruit knows what's up. He tells his mom, "You shouldn't have helped Samara, you dumb cunt. Now her spirit has been released into the wild or something." What are you having me read? Rachel realizes that Noah's 7-day waiting period is coming to a close at just that very moment. She frantically calls him and races across town to save the day. At his apartment, Noah's doing some video analysis or some such, and the TV in the background turns on to static. He turns it off, but the TV is having none of that. It again starts, and the image of the well from the video is on the screen. Samara begins to climb out of the well and walk towards the TV screen, and then completely out of it. Samara stares directly at him, causing his death in the most horrific orgasm face ever. Rachel discovers his body and shrieks in terror. At home, Rachel hysterically destroys the tape, unable to understand why she was spared, but not Noah. Then she sees the copy she made. "Aha," she says. She helps Aiden make a copy of the tape for someone else to watch, saving him. She tells him that everything's going to be alright now. But her crotch fruit is too smart for that placation. "What's going to happen to the person who watches the copy?" he wonders. Cue the inevitable sequel.
The end. I love how the crotch fruit voice you made is a combination of that little boy and Tangina. This well is clean. Could y'all back up? You're jamming Samara's frequency.
This plot recontextualization is giving me whiplash.
The Ring was released in the U.S. on October 18, 2002, on almost 2,000 screens. The film grossed a little more than 15 million opening weekend, securing the #1 spot at the box office. The film would become a sleeper hit, leading DreamWorks to expand its release to 700 more screens. Other movies in the top 10 that weekend included My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Red Dragon, and Jonah, a VeggieTales movie.
The Ring would remain in the top 10 for 8 weeks, and worldwide would gross $249 million against a budget of $48 million.
That is what you call a blockbuster.
That's a horror blockbuster.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
$200 million above the budget.
For real.
The Ring holds a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes with an audience score at 48%. The site's consensus reads, with little gore and a lot of creepy visuals, The Ring gets under your skin thanks to Gore Verbinski's haunting sense of atmosphere and an impassioned performance by Naomi Watts. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave The Ring an average grade of B-.
But only a 48% audience score.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's weird. On Ebert and Roper, Richard Roper gave the film a thumbs up and said it was very gripping and scary despite some minor unanswered questions. Roger Ebert gave the film a thumbs down and felt it was boring and borderline ridiculous. He also disliked the extended, detailed ending. Jeremy Conrad from IGN praised The Ring for its atmospheric setup and cinematography and said that, quote, there are disturbing images, but the film doesn't really rely on gore to deliver the scares. Very true. Film Threats Jim Agnew called it dark, disturbing, and original, even though it's a remake.
That's right. Not that original.
And the remake is a remake.
Damn it, Jim.
And the original is actually a remake.
That's right.
But we're going to get to that.
And we're going to talk about that movie, too. Despite the praise given to the direction, some criticized the lack of character development. Jonathan Rosenbaum from the Chicago Reader said that the film was an utter waste of Watts, perhaps because the script didn't bother to give her a character.
She had a fucking character.
Mm-hmm. Whereas William Arnold from the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, which I guess that's where she worked, maybe, disagreed, claiming that she projects intelligence, determination, and resourcefulness in the film. Several critics, like the Miami Herald's Renee Rodriguez and the USA Today's Claudia Pugh, found themselves confused and thought for all the time the film spends explaining, it still doesn't make much sense.
I think her newspaper in the film was called The Inquirer.
Okay.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's... we're going to talk about the story's economy, but I think it really, really establishes a very specific personality and dynamic with her and the relationship between her ex-boyfriend and her son.
That's right.
And I think it does that very, very quickly and does it very well, and it's consistent.
I would agree.
And so whoever this is just flat out wrong objectively.
I mean, I love her fucking character in this movie. She's one of the best things about this movie.
I love it. And I love that she's so fucking flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's actually not a great person.
She's really not. I mean, she's not a very good mom, but we'll get into all that.
Yeah. And the film does have its accolades.
Mm-hmm. At the MTV Movie Awards, it was nominated for Best Movie, and it won Best Villain.
Fangoria Chainsaw Awards gave it a Best Wide Release Film, Best Actress, and Best Score.
So I didn't add something into the document because I was looking at the list of accolades from the Fangoria Chainsaw Awards that year. It was nominated for Best Wide Release Film, but also nominated for Worst Film.
That's stupid.
Yeah. So I was like, either that's a typo or that's just really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. At the Saturn Awards, it was nominated for Best Score, but it won Best Horror Film and Best Actress.
I'd like to know what won Best Score.
Yeah, I need to look that up.
That'd be interesting. Yeah. So the success of The Ring paved the way for American remakes of several other Asian and Japanese horror films, including The Grudge from 2004, Dark Water from 2005, which is also by the original author of The Ring, by the way, and Shudder and The Eye, both from 2008. And there's a bunch of others like Pulse and things like that, right?
There's a ton. So
Yeah.
I remember like right around like the mid 2000s to late 2000s, aughts, like there seemingly was a lot of American remakes of like Asian horror movies.
And it all has to do with like phones and shit. Like
Yeah.
a lot of it.
I mean,
Except
a
for
lot
The
of
Grudge.
like Japanese horror movies have to do with technology, right? And
And
like
water.
and water. So, but there was a lot of them. And some of them are really good and some of them are really bad, in my opinion. But in almost all the instances, I would say, all the instances, I would say that the actual Asian movie is leaps and bounds better than the American one. But certain movies like
sometimes
The Ring and The Grudge stand out as really excellent movies.
Either
that
equally
stand on their own.
as good or better, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's subtle changes to those two movies in particular that make them different than their predecessor.
I feel like remakes get a bad rap, like international remakes, but I feel like we've gotten some really good ones, like Quarantine.
Oh yeah, like from Rec. Yeah, I really like Quarantine.
Rec and Quarantine were, I thought, really good. The Ring and Ringu, The Grudge and Ju-on. But I want to say that we've gotten a lot of good ones, like Let the Right One In.
Yeah,
I think is another good example. I never watched the one, but I have listened to the score because Michael Giacchino did it. Yeah, I watched the original not Norse, but Norwegian one.
So
Swedish.
The original's better, but the American one is okay. You know what I mean? It's not terrible.
I didn't feel the need to see it because the first one kind of disturbed me.
It's a little highfalutin.
But I have highfalutin.
It's a little highfalutin.
But I have listened to the score, and Michael Giacchino's score for Let the Right One In is excellent.
The Ring ranked number 20 on the cable channel Bravo's list of 100 scariest movie moments. And I feel like that, what part, which came out of the TV? That's the part they listed.
Probably, because that was shocking at the time.
It really was.
Bloody Disgusting ranked it 6th in their list of the top 20 horror films of the decade, with the article saying that The Ring was not only the first American J-horror remake out of the gate, it also still stands as the best. I don't know when this list came out, but it's discussing from 2001 to 2010, right?
I still would say The Grudge is better than The Ring.
Really?
That's just me.
Okay.
Some
people, yeah.
I really love The Grudge.
I kind of love them both kind of equally. They're very different. The Ring was a translation versus I really feel like The Grudge just flipped some things around because it still took place in Japan.
Well, and it's the same director as the original Japanese version.
Yeah, he remade it two times in different ways.
Yeah, he was just making the same movie over and over again and just adding different things and stuff like that. I really want to talk about The Grudge. Mm-hmm. So maybe next summer we can do that. Because I feel like that's an interesting conversation to have,
and how the studios eventually ruin these franchises.
Yeah, for real. I mean, my God, Rings.
Well,
y'all.
It's not going to be the last time we compare them. So let's talk about her cast a little bit.
Okay.
Right. So Naomi Watts, I don't know that she's underrated, but I feel like she's kind of dropped out of view recently. Previous to this, she was only really known, I would say, for Mulholland Drive. And then after this, she went on to do Peter Jackson's King Kong, where she did an excellent job. I'm not a huge fan of that movie.
No, but she was great.
But she had an amazing job to do. Mm-hmm. Such a physical performance as a flapper, also a vaudeville dancer. And she had to do flips and everything. And then The Impossible with Ewan McGregor and a very young Tom Holland, which was an amazing movie.
That movie is just crushing with its sadness.
Oh yeah, but I loved it though because it's so hopeful. And then Birdman, which is more recent, and then much more recently, Goodnight Mommy, which is kind of no one really talked about. It came out. I saw an Amazon preview for it.
I watched it with you.
It was all right.
Yeah, I mean, the German movie's better, you know, but yeah. So Naomi Watts, as far as the horror genre is concerned, right? She's been in anytime that there's an American remake of a foreign horror movie, Naomi Watts seems to be in it.
Well, because she can do a fucking American accent.
Yeah.
And almost no one else can. Because I've seen, Rebecca Ferguson is in the Silo series, right? And she's an amazing actor. I loved her as Rose the Hat in the Shining sequel, right? And she's also in Dune. And she's in a bunch of other things. And I love that. But she cannot do a fucking American accent. And it shows and it's cringy. A lot of other, British people, can do it better than Americans can do British, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But you can still kind of tell. With Naomi Watts, I couldn't tell. I would have thought she was American.
It was years.
Her and Christian Bale are essentially the best for that accents.
And same for him too. It was years before I knew either one of them were not American.
Well, he would go to press junkets and to speak an American accent because he thought it was, more useful.
But I mean, so she's in The Ring, right? That remake of a Japanese horror movie. She's in Goodnight Mommy recently, which is either Austrian or German horror movie remake. She was in Funny Games, which is another German horror movie remake. She's just the queen of them, right? And she's so good in all of these movies. I feel like her genre work is amazing. And Mulholland Drive is great.
Really. And more than just horror, right? She's genres across the board. She can do anything. And I'd like to see more of her.
I would too. And I don't think that she's gotten the recognition that she deserves. I don't think she's been nominated for an Academy Award yet.
Not even for Mulholland or anything?
No. Mulholland was too weird for the Academy. But she's done another Lynch movie that I haven't seen. I forget the name of now, so it's an anticlimactic statement. But I mean, like, she's really good. And she's not afraid to do genre work.
Nope.
Which I like. Even Birdman is kind of an off-kilter kind of movie.
Well, they got a lot of people, at least another person here that's very, very, like, established and great actor that is not afraid of genre, and that would be Brian Cox.
Definitely.
Every time I see him, he's amazing, right? He played Richard Morgan, Anna Morgan's husband, and, of course, the pseudo-father of, Samara in this. And, of course, he was previously in, like, the late 70s, right, as in Manhunter, as Hannibal.
Yep.
Right. And then, like, the next time I saw him was like in Braveheart, The Long Kiss Goodnight, which I love him in.
It was good.
Kiss the Girls. Then Adaptation, X-Men 2 sequel. Troy, where he plays Agamemnon. Zodiac. I don't really remember him in that. Trick or Treat, which he has an amazing comedic horror performance.
Love it.
At the, the height of like Bruce Campbell. And he's like in his 70s when he does it. Autopsy of Jane Doe, which he did. And then more recently, HBO's Succession series.
Which he has gotten like Emmy nominations for. And
he's
I hear
also a published author for like memoirs and stuff. Like, he's great.
Brian Cox is an amazing actor. Like, I like him every time I see him. Again,
he also did a good American accent in this.
So, I mean, someone else who doesn't get the recognition they deserve. Like, The Autopsy of Jane Doe is a frightening fucking movie.
Until the very end.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of like...
It could have been a 5-star and then it just flies off the goddamn rails.
But he does an excellent job. Yeah. And that's a very limited cast in that movie. And they really do just some amazing acting work to keep you on the edge of your seat through a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I forgot, I'm sure that I'm sure that we gushed about him in our Trick or Treat episode too.
Probably a little bit, I'm sure.
So, yeah, I mean, like, he's barely in this, but I mean, he's Brian Cox.
He's memorable. He's certainly memorable, right? Well, part of that is the script and, the plotting, but, also in this is Martin Henderson. I don't remember him from anything before this or really after this because I never really got into Grey's Anatomy, although I really liked whenever I saw it. I don't know how much he was on Grey's Anatomy.
I don't remember him a lot from it.
And then he was more recently in X.
That's right. We both liked X.
He's good.
He was good in it. I mean, he played like the producer of the porn, right? And like, let's just say that he's just as attractive as he ages too.
Yeah.
He was super like daddy and hot in X.
And the kid, Aiden, was played by David Dorfman, who is now retired and an attorney. I think his last role was like one of the Lannister guards on Game of Thrones randomly, like back in 2017. He's now 30.
Oh my God. Really?
Yeah, he's 30 years old now.
Fuck, that makes me feel old. 13 years older than that.
He's only 10 years younger than me. I was apparently the same age as those actresses at the beginning of the movie when this came out, I was in college. But barely. I was like a freshman in college when this came out.
This kid. Now, I mean, like, I remember watching The Ring for the first time, right, in the theater when it came out, like everyone else did. And I was just like, all right, like, a creepy kid. We've seen this so many times in horror movies, blah, 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 old hat, right? But on this watch, I think I appreciated his performance a lot more.
He's very distinctive. There's no other kid really kind of like him. He's not a kid at all. They wrote him like he was an adult.
And he talks like an adult. He acts like an adult.
Played it as an adult.
He did. And like, even like with the creepy kid trope, right, that we've seen 1,000,001 times, like he sets himself apart from all of those other like stereotypical characters that we've seen. And he's not creepy. That's the wrong word. He's matter of fact.
Yeah.
He's grown up.
Yeah.
And he's like, his character is dealing with the situation in the best way he can. And that is to be a grown up about it. Right. And that kid has been handed a raw deal at every turn in this movie. And like, just when he's sitting in the car and his dad, Noah, is talking to him and he was just like, I can't really be a dad. I don't know how to for X, Y, and Z. He's like, but I don't want somebody else to do it either. And that kid's response is it's a conundrum.
Yep.
Like, I was just like, I love this kid. I do. Like, I feel like if I had a kid, that's exactly how they'd turn out, probably.
It's a conundrum.
That's right.
Hand me the vodka.
For sure. He wouldn't be calling me Robert. He'd call me Rachel. It's like he did his mom in this movie too. But I mean, come on. That kid he did a really good job. And I really liked that character a lot more than I did when I saw it,
Yeah, and I mean, this still comes out of like Sixth Sense, you know, and everything else before it, The Shining and all that other stuff. And there's some other things about it too, but it's definitely independent enough and special enough in the performance, and it was cast well enough and written well enough to be still distinctive.
That's true. And I mean, I feel like it stands out. I hate to think that this kid was kind of like lumped into all this and people don't remember it being a better performance than what they do. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough when people do really stoic performances. Mm-hmm. They did not let that kid be a kid other than like showing him drawing pictures, and that's it.
That's right.
Right. Otherwise, you would never have known on the page, really. So next up, we've got Davy Chase as Samara Morgan, right? And what I didn't realize was the only thing previous that I know of was that she actually voiced Lilo from Lilo and Stitch.
Okay. It's from my Blue period,
which I've never seen.
What?
And she was also the little girl. She was the younger sister of Donnie Darko and Donnie Darko, and I didn't realize that.
I didn't know that either. Okay.
And then of course she went on to do S Darko, which is the pseudo sequel that I've never seen.
I haven't seen it.
And of course the Ring sequels, and she's still working today.
Apparently she was also on Boy Meets World.
Although now she is 60 years old. No, she's okay.
She's now not an attorney, and she's 60.
Brian Cox stays the same age. Everyone else keeps getting older.
So she plays Samara. I guess she's also the Samara that climbs out of the TV. So she's doing all those like weird contortions and stuff like that.
There was some drama about some casting with that.
Yeah.
And I think I promised a patron that I would look into that, and I completely spaced. I even like searched before I did my notes. I searched my email and documents for that anecdote, and I could not find it. And so there is some sort of anecdote about her casting. There was some drama that she replaced someone else that couldn't do it.
Okay.
But I don't know. Maybe we'll come back for Shooting the Flames and talk about it, or one of our listeners can tell us, share the anecdote about that.
We will find the answer one way or another.
Yeah. I know that there's Shannon Cochran, who played Anna Morgan, and just the mother, and she's been in a shit ton of stuff, but never really like a main, like as far as I know.
Does she even speak in this movie?
I don't think. Yeah, she did. She's like, "You were all I wanted," or whatever. And then she pushes her in the fucking well.
She like puts a bag over her head.
You're all I wanted.
Eat bag.
I was like, if you're going to kill yourself anyway, why'd you kill your child first? Whatever. I guess when the visions didn't stop.
It's true, because she was still alive down that well.
Anyway, we also need to talk about Gore Verbinski, the director.
Yeah, because I feel like I know his name, right? I know the movies that he's directed, and I feel like he's a bigger director than he really is.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just know him for the ring.
Or smaller. And maybe it sounds like a famous name.
Right.
Gore Verbinski.
But it's Gore Vidal that I'm probably thinking of, right? One of our most famous gay writers.
Baggett.
I know. I'm like, but it's Gore Vidal.
Yeah. Well, I remember when they said the Pirates of the Caribbean was going to be directed by Gore Verbinski. I was like, oh, they got a big one, And it was like, actually, no, at the time, not.
No, not really.
So he actually started his career in L.A. in rock bands, kind of like Hans Zimmer or even Danny Elfman.
Yeah.
But he actually transitioned to making 8mm short films and eventually got signed to do music videos for bands like Bad Religion and NoFX.
Oh, so he was on the bunk.
Yeah, but then he started doing commercials for companies like Nike, Coca-Cola, Canon, United Airlines, with one of his most famous commercials being for Budweiser, where the frogs croak the brand name. Yes, that was him.
Oh, good. We have him to thank for that shit. Why? Fuck that shit.
Wise?
The only thing worse than that is that fucking Chihuahua wanting Taco Bell.
Okay, what about the one where the guy's like answering the phone? What's up?
Oh, yeah. Stupid.
Whatever. The best commercial of all time will still be that like Doritos.
The ostrich commercial. Which I had never seen. I have only seen that commercial on YouTube. I've never seen it on TV.
Me either. Yeah.
It's so amazing.
That's all I do is I watch the commercials afterwards.
Those fucking frogs though. Gore Verbinski.
Well, so obviously that got him some fame, like, and his just career built very organically. Like he just doesn't seem like he got in via a bunch of money or a bunch of like, nepotism or anything like that. And so previous to this, he did Mouse Hunt with like Nathan Lane, and then The Mexican with Brad Pitt, I guess, maybe Penelope Cruz.
I think it's Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts, okay. And then after The Ring, he directed Pirates of the Caribbean, Rango, The Lone Ranger, and A Cure for Wellness. I've not seen any of those except for like the first and second Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh, I saw Rango. It was all right.
I haven't seen Rango. I haven't seen Lone Ranger. I did see A Cure for Wellness, and it's creepy as fuck.
Really?
Yeah, I mean it's not great, you know, but like visually, it's really, really good, which I think is where his strengths lie when it comes to horror movies.
Is it his partnerships, right? We're going to get into that. But across these films, he's been nominated for an Oscar 15 times with 2 wins across Rango and the Pirates of the Caribbean.
So, I mean, like he's done blockbusters, obviously, right? And then like blockbusters that were, you know, sort of failed miserably, like The Lone Ranger. Like I think famously that movie made $0 or something like that.
Yeah, I think there was also some weird like cultural, you know, stuff with like fucking Johnny Depp dressing up as a Native American, which wasn't great.
No.
You know, and then of course, I don't think it came out at the time, but of course their lead actor, Armie Hammer, shitty name, ended up being a cannibal, allegedly.
Allegedly. Yes, we have to continue to do that. Mia Goth is in A Cure for Wellness, right? It was one of the first movies that I recognized her from, right? Or like she got on my radar with. So, I mean, it's just a really odd, very, very visual horror movie, right? Lots of atmosphere, which I think he does really well in this particular movie too.
Yep.
So.
Well, Gore Verbinski was initially inspired to do a remake of The Ring after Walter F. Parks sent him a VHS copy of the Japanese film, presumably Ringu, which he described as intriguing, pulp, and avant-garde.
Oh, yeah? Hold on, let me open this beer.
Yeah, so the massive success of The Sixth Sense and, of course, the huge popularity of Ringu and the Ring's franchise overall in Asia gave the studios confidence to greenlight The Ring, especially when considering the recontextualization moment in The Ring that's reminiscent of the things like, you know, The Sixth Sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as big, obviously.
No,
you know,
it's a little less of a twist.
But it's enough to make the audience go, oh, without being M. Night Shyamalan to death.
To death? Beaten over the head with a Shyamalan?
Yeah. So zooming out a bit, The Ring is actually based on the novel Ring by Koji Suzuki. That is actually a series that contains the books called Ring, Spiral, Loop, Birthday, S, and Tide.
I literally know nothing about any of these books.
Yeah, so you could go and read all these, translated from Japanese, of course. So this series has been made into 6 film adaptations and 2 TV series. I didn't know about all these.
TV series? The fuck? Really?
Really. So the first Ring is called Ring Kanzenban, and it's from 1995. And this is the first Japanese film and supposedly the most accurate to the book, but it's not what anyone has seen. What they've seen is the one that came out 3 years later called Ringu.
Yep.
From 1998, or really called The Ring, but, you know, Japanese say Ringu. And so that's what most people think, but I didn't think there was a movie before it.
I didn't know there was.
That's theoretically more accurate. So it'd be interesting to see and compare. Maybe I'm seeing a Patreon poll coming up. I don't know.
Oh.
Because there's lots of things here. Then there was the Ring virus from 1999 for South Korea. And that only exists because South Korea at the time had a ban on Japanese cultural imports, which was lifted in 1998, but the film had already been completed, right? And so this is a South Korean remake just so it would enter their market.
Oh my God.
Right? Finally, there was The Ring, The Final Chapter, which is a Japanese 12-episode miniseries. And that same year, a sequel series came out called Rasen, which is a Japanese sequel series consisting of 13 episodes. All of this happened before The Ring came out.
That's fucking bonkers to me.
Right? I should have saved some of this for my fun facts.
How fucking popular
For real.
was that novel,
And
first
they
of
were so
all?
bonkers about it that South Korea made a copy of it even though they, you know, crazy.
Oh my gosh. I want to know how much money Ringu made in Japan.
Maybe they felt like they needed to make a copy to save themselves from North Korea.
Probably. Maybe someone was going to die in 7 days. They made that movie and they started their inevitable march toward death. And then they're like, let's make the Ring virus. Yeah. Let's make the final chapter. Let's make Raisin.
And then The Ring came out in 2002. The Ring 2 in 2005. Still based on The Ring, by the way, the original book. And then Rings from 2017, also American, is based on the second book, Spiral. And it was originally called The Ring 3D, which is pretty much all you need to know. As far as I know, nothing has been based off of the other books, the other like 4 or 5 books of that series yet.
So Rings, that shit-tacular movie from 2017 is based on one of the novels.
Yes. The sequel novel, Spiral. I'm guessing loosely because it was going to be called The Ring 3D.
The movie is spectacularly bad. Like, and it takes a lot for me to say that a movie's bad, listeners. Y'all know by now. Like, I'm like usually pretty gracious with things, but I watched that movie and I on DVD. Like, I didn't go see it in the theater, but I rented it from Redbox or some shit. And I was like, what in the actual fuck am I looking at? It really is just a terrible movie that I kind of want to watch again just because it was so fucking bad.
Well, maybe that can be in the poll. I don't know. Or maybe we'll just do Ringu.
Yeah. I mean, it could be any of these things. I mean, obviously, I don't think we can watch like 12 or 13 episodes of a series.
And some of these we might not be able to find. So we might just have to do Ringu.
The thing is, I mean, I've seen Ringu before, right?
I have too. And I think I remember it being a little bit scarier, just less interesting.
It is scarier than the American version, for sure, right? But I feel like a lot of these...
It's more adult because it's not a little girl.
Right.
You know?
So, I mean, well, and I feel like these Asian horror movies are boundary pushing, right? And are just truly frightening when you watch them. I feel like Japanese directors are not afraid to like really get you scared visually, right? And I don't know. I'm just like the Asian horror movies are really, really good. Sometimes gross. You know, but like Ringu is no exception. It's a really good, very scary horror movie. Yeah. Which I didn't see until after I saw The American Ring, but I was just like, wow, this movie's better. Right?
I remember liking The Grudge better than Ju-on, but Ringu about the same as Ring for different reasons though.
Yes.
Something like that.
And I'm pretty much like with that. You know, I feel like Ju-on is a good movie, right? I still like Ju-on better than Ringu as far as like Asian horror movies go. I think I just like the plot of The Grudge better than Ring.
Well, it just adds a whole nother layer to it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me.
But one of the scariest horror movies that I've ever seen in my entire life is the sequel to Ju-on. So Ju-on 2 is just completely frightening. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think this opens up a lot of conversation and things that we should probably do more often on the podcast, right? So I was watching The Ring and I was thinking to myself, like, we really haven't done a whole lot of like, you know, international horror.
Yeah, I want to do Rec. I want to do like compare and contrast Rec and Quarantine. I want to compare and contrast Grudge with Ju-on, and I want to watch The Orphanage. You know, I want to watch, we can do The Orphanage and Pan's Labyrinth and do like a Guillermo del Toro thing with like Hellboys thrown in there or something. You know, a lot of these can be put into our like blockbuster times.
And I think it's important for people to realize, especially horror fans, like if you haven't gone sort of like international and watched some of these movies that you have to sort of seek out that are not in, you know, our language, like you're missing out. Like
we've done a little bit of that with like we did Autorados, right?
We did Autorados.
Terrified.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like we've done some, you know, but we need to pay a little bit more attention, I feel. But I mean, like listeners, I'd like to hear from you guys. Like, what do you feel about international horror? Do you watch these movies? Right. Yeah. Are you even willing to? Cause I feel like sometimes, at least on social media, when it comes to horror, people don't really talk about them as much as they do American movies.
It's just like things have shifted away from like J-horror and more into like the French extremity. And now like we're getting other places, you know, I feel like we're getting a lot of like South America now. It's going to be, it's really interesting. And it's like, I'm equal opportunity.
And same. I mean, like I am not opposed to watching, you know, international films. We do it all the time. Yeah. Right. So I'm really excited to.
We just watched that, what was it, like Mexican? About the old people that ended up being aliens.
Oh yeah. The Smelterly. That's not even out yet. God. But yeah, I mean, like Mexican horror, like it's all really, really good. Yeah. So be equal opportunity, everybody. I'll get off my soapbox now.
Okay. Well, back to The Ring. Gore Verbinski admitted he didn't want to cast of big stars. He wanted the film to be discovered, you know, and describes the wave of harsh criticism from hardcore fans of the original Japanese film as inevitable, although he expressed desire for them to find the remake equally compelling. He also sought to retain the minimalism prevalent throughout The Ring and set it in Seattle due to its wet and isolated atmosphere.
And he does build atmosphere throughout.
He really does. And The Ring was filmed on location across Washington State, including Seattle, Port Townsend, Whidbey Island, which I've been there, which is great. And makes sense. And with the exception of the lighthouse, which was actually the Acuna Head Lighthouse in Newport, Oregon, still it's that northwest, you know, passage, the northwest coastline. Yeah. Really, that is, all the setting for a lot of these, where it's like never really quite sunny, and you know it's kind of oppressive a little bit, but it's also always rainy, and you know.
There's something about watching this movie because, like, it's raining throughout a lot of it, right? When it's Seattle.
Well, originally they were going to have like a Derry, Maine type of situation to put it in the northeast. Oh, right. Yeah. It was going to be like Maine or Massachusetts.
No, I feel like this fits. You know what I mean? Like, this is a movie where the actual atmosphere and climate of the setting like plays an important part in how you feel while watching this movie.
Yeah.
Right? There's something very like, I want to say sad and depressing, you know what I mean? But that's not quite the case. You know, I've never been to Seattle, but when something is raining like all the time, right? And sort of gloomy, it adds to the way you feel about it. And I feel like a lot of this movie feels sad and inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Which is what you're supposed to feel, because these people are like literally going to die in a couple days, you know, a week, right? Yeah. And like the entire atmosphere lends itself to that. Like nobody's fucking happy in this movie. The atmosphere is not happy. And when you're watching it, you're like, okay.
And yet it's haunting and beautiful.
Yes, very much so. Right?
So it's hard to really like put a pin on exactly what it is.
Exactly.
But it's an atmosphere.
It is. And also I feel like, is that what Seattle just looks like? Or did they do something digitally to make it seem rainier or gloomier, or just like...
It's like they did something that's actually more like an Asian high-rise apartment building. Like, because there's no high-rise apartment buildings like really like that, like in Seattle, right? Okay, like the zoning is... Don't get me on a soapbox about the zoning in Seattle. Right? That was a little weird, but of course they filmed it there, so I don't know. You know, certain angles, but and they didn't really they didn't really show us the beauty of Seattle itself, even though they were there on location, probably on purpose. Mm. And then the more isolated things just right outside of Seattle, like Whidbey Island and like a bunch of other places where it's just like lush forest, but cloudy and drizzly all the time, you know, when it's not just like the height of summer. So, you know, it's a very distinctive looking movie.
So my cousin and her wife just moved to Seattle like a little over a year ago, and I need to go visit because I've never been, and I really, really want to fucking go to Seattle. Yeah. So now I'm just going to go on a ring tour and be like, oh my God, take me to all
You can go to that lighthouse and take your picture there.
That's right. Let's go to Oregon. Now that I'm in Seattle, let's go to Oregon and go to that lighthouse.
Well, speaking of which, that excellent cinematography was done by Bohan Bazelli, also known for Pumpkinhead, Boxing Helena, Body Snatchers from 1993, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Hairspray, The Lone Ranger, Pete's Dragon, that's David Lowery from The Green Knight, you know, A Cure for Wellness, Underwater with Kristen Stewart, which is an excellent looking film, and Peter Pan and Wendy, also by David Lowery. So he's coupling with this director, Gore Verbinski, as well as David Lowery for a lot of these. And this is one of those best looking films, in my opinion. Like they did a lot of film coloring, that greenish haze, not quite like The Matrix that had done it. You know, this is following the string of late 90s like Fight Club and, you know, and things like that, where they're starting to add browns and sepias into the film and silvers in the tone to like bring the blacks out. And so like with this, they gave it green to give that sickly, unnatural feel. You know, they relied on a lot of like backwards photography and backwards movement and things like that. I feel like there's a lot of excellent and interesting cinematography going on in that like avant-garde student film, like Ring video, which is very stream of consciousness. Yeah. If you look back and you think about Samara's experience falling into the well and her mother and just images of a comb going through hair and a mirror, and some of it's very obvious and some of it is more of an allusion to what things felt like. You know, like the nails going through her fingernails and things like that. You know, you see that in that video, people drowning, you know, en masse, you know, in water and stuff. And it starts to make more and more sense the more you think about it. And there's visual allusions to it, whether the characters or the audience know it or not, throughout that movie that was done with a lot of visual storytelling. And I don't think this movie gets enough credit for it.
It really does not, because so I watched it twice in preparation for this.
Okay. Right?
So we will get into some of the reasons why, but on my second rewatch before this, like I rewound the part where she watched it for the first time. Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've maybe seen this movie like 4 times now. So in the theater, when it was released on DVD, and then these last 2 times. And I've never really paid that close attention to the video, except that it's creepy and off-putting, right? But like on this second rewatch, I was literally paying attention to like every fucking frame.
Everything is there for a reason.
And it's so fucking neat and terrifying. And then you start to notice like other things throughout the movie. I mean, some of it is really in your face, like the fucking ladder against the wall and
some
whatnot.
of it like they can't help but notice, but other things that you start noticing maybe.
So the creepiest part in that fucking videotape is when it switches to all those people sort of like squirming together, drowning en masse. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like my stomach dropped out. And I was like, that is the creepiest fucking image ever. Like it's just, and I always thought it was like maggots or something like that. But I like stopped and paused it and looked at it. And I was just like, That's really fucking creepy.
And it reminds me, like, this is a transition into, like, you know, more technological horror that actually started trying to imitate J-horror in a way, and like White Noise.
Yeah.
And was kind of, it made me think about White Noise a little bit with some of the things that they were showing on the TV a little bit.
I do love those references, though. I think that's neat. Because it also plays into the fact that this ghost or child or whatever is using its ability to like etch things into people's brains, right?
And there's a lot of production design to do that too. Like that tree, like they that whole red tree or whatever, that was not a real tree. They handmade that with like paper mache and like paper leaves and shit. And of course they had to do that set where it was all etched into the wall and everything. So
did you also, so when she's watching the tape and they show that tree and it's sort of black and whitish, it reminded me a lot of Gods and Monsters, right? It's kind of like that tree on the hill in that movie too.
Interesting.
So I was like, how many times are we going to see the tree from Frankenstein or something like that? I mean, maybe it's a little homage or whatnot, but
I think there's a lot of hidden homages in this.
I agree.
On this watch, I was reminded of Kubrick several times.
Okay.
With The Shining, like the symmetrical shots at the beginning of the kid on the staircase, you know, and then later in the hallway walking up, everything's super symmetrical and he's like standing straight. You know, I almost expect him to open his mouth and say, "Come play with me," you know, or something. And there's a little bit of some beautiful aerial shots. Some like world-class aerial shots in this movie that I think aren't fully appreciated, that also remind me of the slow pan-ups of you know, some of the shots in at the beginning of The Shining, right? And also The Shining is based, their theme is based on Dies Irae, and there's a lot of Dies Irae in this score as well, which is of course by Hans Zimmer. And this remains one of my favorite horror scores of all time for a lot of reasons.
You do, and this is not the first time that we've talked about this. Obviously, we're going to talk about it now because we're talking about the movie.
Yeah.
But way back in our very second episode, you talked about this in conjunction with Goblin's score for Suspiria, right? So maybe he got a little something from that too.
It's an undocumented homage, right? But, you know, it's an homage to Suspiria that we actually played for you almost 5 years ago in that deep dive of Suspiria. And on this watch, I noticed that it actually starts playing for the first time as soon as Anna Morgan is on screen for the first time, looking all Morticia Addams with the rest of the people. Remember all those people that are like island garb or whatever, and their white dresses, and she's like black.
Yes, she looks like she's from the 1800s. Like,
kind of alludes with the leitmotif that she is actually kind of a witch, or is interested in that sort of thing, and that might be having part of the problem that we find out with like the next movie and other things that she is susceptible to, at least, you know, whether Samara's adopted or not, that she's part of it. She's part of the problem, you know what I mean? And so they start playing that witch score that's in Suspiria. It kind of makes it a little bit more childlike in a way with that sound, but that's added to Suspiria, but it's also you know, at the heart of the Ring score by Hans Zimmer. And so we played The Difference for you way back almost 5 years ago, and I think we'll do so again now. Here's a cut of the Ring score. And here's a cut of Suspiria.
Witch.
Well, they sound a lot alike, right? Obviously, it's a homage, right?
Yeah.
And Hans Zimmer does an amazing work here. There's obviously it's haunting, it's beautiful, and all that, and sometimes even touching music. But it also has these really deep, dark ramp ups that go into pure horror moments of, you know, that ramp up the story, you know, and the trauma and the tension.
For sure. And I feel like one of the best examples of use of score in this movie is when the horse jumps off the fucking ferry.
My God.
Like, now since we had that episode on Suspiria, I have gone back to listen to the score of The Ring even before I watched it, because I was like, okay, it sounds really pretty, and it is. I like it very, very much. But you know, when I'm watching movies, sometimes I get so wrapped up into things that I don't really notice like background music as much as I would with something with lyrics in it. Sure. But the music in The Ring, my good God, especially in that particular moment, that whole horse moment on the ferry, I was just like, the score right now is so amazing. I was just like, good God. Like, it's just really good. And it makes the tension palpable. And I don't know, it's just that part in the movie is frightening.
It took a long time for that soundtrack to come out too, right? Because it wasn't until The Ring 2 where they kind of combined the scores and released them as a single album, even though it was by like 3 different composers at that point. The Ring never had its own and still does not have its own soundtrack release. So it's all combined. So we have like The Well, like there's 2 really long, like 10-minute something tracks that are really principally by Hans Zimmer, and then you get more and more into like the other composer stuff, but it's still really, really worth it to get it. Let's talk about the movie overall.
Okay.
Right? Like, I have some thoughts. Like, this is like kind of an interesting movie to look back on because we don't usually think of this as one of those hardcore recontextualization movies like Shutter Island or even The Sixth Sense. And I think that's possibly due to the huge explosion of this into pop culture awareness and other ways, and other horror movies like kind of riffing off of its semi-original tropes in the years following. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing to come back on because it's not known for its recontextualization because it's not important enough. Recontextualization is very matter of fact. You know, it's not like the entire movie falls apart without it, like Sixth Sense would or Shutter Island in some ways.
Well, it needs it. Those are the endings.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like this movie could have ended in 2 different places.
It could have ended and then had that sequel, which starts with that 4th act. You know?
Correct. Yes. So, yeah, I mean, like, I wasn't completely shocked the first time I saw this movie, you know, that it continued after like the proper burial, quote unquote. All right. Cause I was like, they're not wrapping things up neatly enough. There's got to be something else coming. And what is shocking though is like the actual moment when that girl comes out of the television, right? When Samara comes out. But
yeah. And I think I want to talk about those moments, the specific moments a little later.
Okay, good. All right. Cause there are many. Yeah,
there are. But I think like a lot of us forget on rewatch so many years later that no one really knew what The Ring actually was going in. It was a mystery, and it had the horror movie fans a buzz, which sent even more horror fans into the theaters to find out what The Ring was, kind of like The Matrix or something, right? You have to see it to know, you know. But based on the trailers and the marketing, The Ring was the telephone ring, with Samara saying 7 days.
But The Ring is everything else. The Ring is everything in this movie.
It really is. And so like I was going to ask you, what did you think The Ring was going in versus what do you think it is now?
Well, based on like the poster had an actual ring on it, like a circle.
But you didn't know what it was.
But I didn't know what it was.
Like a coffee stain.
Yeah, and I had exactly. And I had never seen Ringu at that point, you know? And so like going into it, I was just like, I literally had no idea.
So apparently a lot of people thought it was the ring, the phone ring. That had never even fucking occurred to me.
No, that's silly to me.
A lot of people think that apparently. Like that's like the internet's consensus is what it was, the phone ring.
But now
the ring, the phone calling you, telling you you're going to die, right? That's the whole premise. Apparently from the marketing and the trailers, right? Because that's all they could really show.
I mean, after I'd seen the movie, I still didn't think that was why it was called The Ring.
So I'm very visual, right? And so I always just, you know, the ring is what she saw when she died, which was the light ring around the well capper.
Well, see,
and then she's looking up at the well, and it's that light ring coming through, and that is the ring. It's the last thing she saw before she died.
Yes, and that's kind of what's on the poster, right? So that's what we can see visually as the ring.
But you didn't know it was a well.
No, I didn't. I did not know it was
until you're about 4/5 through that movie. You didn't know what it was.
And then about halfway through the movie, I was like, maybe the ring is just like the never-ending cycle of people watching it and then dying, people watching it and then dying.
Exactly, right? So although the meaning of the title The Ring is ambiguous, Koji Suzuki, the author of the original novel, always intended it to mean the cyclical nature of the curse. Yeah. Having to watch the tape, get cursed, and copy the tape, cycle beginning again, right? Rather than the phone ringing. Listeners, let us know. Did you just think it was when you think of the ring, do you think of the phone ring, or do you think of the well ring? Did you think of the plot ring? Like, are you thinking about all those things?
I mean, and also,
put a ring on it. Call us.
If you like it, then you put a ring on it. This movie's kind of dated too, and what struck me really,
it's over 20 years old. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, fuck, God, you're right. 21 years old.
It could drink.
The ring could drink. In October, I was watching the movie this time, and I was just like, my God, how dated is this? And it's only been 20 years. How much have things changed in 20 fucking years?
Well, it's just funny, right? Because it's like anything that came out in like 2007 is going to look dated compared to everything that came out in 2008, simply by the use of smartphones in movies.
That's true.
Right?
So
it's like you got to give it a break.
You do. And you have to just remember when things are made, you know? That's why I added all those jokes into the synopsis. I was like, she works for a fucking newspaper, right? Newspapers are essentially dead at this point, right?
Well,
at least the printed version of them. Yeah. And then like, it's all about these landlines ringing and like answering machines and things like that. And I was just like, okay, well, what if you watch the tape and you only have a cell phone for Samara to call you on, but your phone's on silent?
Well, it's like now it's like it loses some of its edges. It's like, okay, well, I guess we're safe because no one has a fucking VHS player.
That's right. No one's going to watch it because the tape can't exist. But then again, if I do happen to see it, how am I going to make a copy of it?
At the same time, though, this is now Samara's world, right? Because if she can etch things into paper, walls, VHS tapes, and brains, you can bet she can make a viral fucking TikTok video.
That's true.
You know what I mean? And that's something that she's instantly, the world's just dead. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's so out there now that she would just win. There's no stopping it.
That's true.
You know, it would have to be like governments finding this thing and shutting it down on servers and shit. You know what I mean? There's no amount of sleuthing and burning video VHSs that would save us in this situation now.
And by God, if they were to remake this movie today and it was on a DVD, like I couldn't fucking burn a DVD to
who the fuck
copy of it. I mean, like, what the fuck? I mean, like, I'm just dead. I'm gonna have to die. Jesus.
You have to share it on TikTok is what happens.
Yeah, you're
sharing
right.
is
like, Chris, check your messages.
As long as everyone just keeps sharing it, you know.
Another ring. Oh, Jesus. I was struck by this. I was just like, my God. Like, it doesn't seem that long ago. Like 2002 does not seem that long ago to me. It doesn't feel like 20 years, right? Yeah. But when I look at like technology and the way that things have changed throughout my entire life, you know, I was like, it's kind of fascinating that something just 20 years ago seems so obsolete at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird. It makes me feel old.
So watching this movie, I was also struck by the economy of storytelling, which I kind of mentioned earlier. I feel like the film goes at a breakneck pace.
Yes.
And nearly constantly gives us bits of exposition kind of folded in, you know, more like a mystery movie than a horror movie. And Verbinski and his cinematographer, BelleBeignet, used like these quick montage vignettes of almost like nature photography style shots to signify time passing, sometimes only 5 or 10 seconds long, like rain on the windshield and some genuinely excellent aerial shots that I mentioned earlier of the Washington, Oregon coastlines and countryside, just to signify that time passes, because this is not a long movie, right? And there's a lot of days happen. You know, we got those title cards, a la The Shining, Tuesday.
Right. I know.
You know? And so, you know, I feel like there's a lot of economy here, and it was done so beautifully, you know, and kind of effortlessly in a way.
And you're right when you say that it goes at that breakneck pace. It really does. Like, I feel that there's a part in this movie where
it doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't. No, I mean, it feels like things
paced very well.
Paced very, very well. And it like doles out the information that you need at just the right fucking moment. Like a mystery movie.
Some of those, you know, scenes, like the doctor scene on the island and stuff, it's like that's when people might start getting bored or something like that, where it's just pure exposition and it's like we need another beat of action or something to happen. You know, so it's not a perfect film. We're not trying to like bend over and break our backs to kiss its ass or anything, you know?
Because there is a point in this movie where it does start to get boring. Like I can't fault Ebert for what he said in his review. Like there are some moments in here, especially on like these rewatches that I did. And I was like, all right, like I feel like we don't really need this particularly.
Like I don't need him like breaking into the basement to get this video only to not find it, only see the record of it and then tell the other person and blah, 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 for us to find it later because it was in Brian Cox's house and blah, blah, blah. It's like it's connective tissue that we need really. Mm-hmm. But it's like I needed a little bit more of an action beat because it's like Nancy Drew movieing at us a lot of the time.
And we were talking about this off mic, guys, but like, this is the first time that I realized that she had some sort of psychic ability, and they pretty much spell it out for you.
I never not knew that. What?
I didn't realize this.
How do you think she was like doing what she was doing.
I didn't ask questions. I was just like, the tape just exists and people are dying and there's the body. I was just like, but watching it this time, I was like, oh my God.
She's burning people's arms in their dreams. Like,
I mean, ghosts can do whatever they want. I don't know. I mean, I didn't connect like some sort of like psychic ability to
she
like
never
etch
sleeps,
things.
Robert.
Clearly. Maybe I just didn't pay that much attention, or I was so wrapped up in the movie the first couple times that I watched it that I just didn't pay attention. But they tell you flat out. I'm like, my God, how did they fucking miss this?
Yeah, I don't know. Some people are more interested in other things. I'm more of like a sci-fi nerd, and so that sort of thing, I'm trying to figure it out, you know? To me, it made sense in my head.
It did not make sense to me. I just didn't question it. I was just like, okay, it's happening.
Yeah, and that's fine too.
Yeah. But I was kind of flabbergasted. I was just like, now she does what?
You judge things, you know, at their surface, where it counts.
That's right. Just like a normal gay man. I'm a normal gay man.
But like, I love that you said earlier, like the technology, and it feels kind of dated because it does feel like a transition moment between that Scream era with the meta storytelling, phones as a source, or, you know, phones and that kind of level of technology as a source of horror, dawn of the internet, and the exploration of upending horror tropes in a way that only J-horror could at the time.
It's true.
Like in this, you can't win. You're fucked. Finding the body solved nothing. A big cinema moment here with, you know, upending expectations. Like, why isn't the movie over? They found the body.
Exactly.
You know, and then she tells her son, and he says, you weren't supposed to help her. She doesn't sleep. The entire audience at that point, back in 2002 or whatever the fuck this was, took like a unified breath, you know, at once. Like, oh, the movie is not over. This is a recontextualization of the trope. Like, this is subverting the trope, you know, and I think it was really, and still is, effective.
I agree. I mean, just from that one moment, like that boy delivers that line in such a way, you know, and the look on his face is very adult-like he has been the entire time. And he's like, why? Like, you didn't need to do any of that. You shouldn't have done any of that. And then we get to like the really, really horrific part of this movie.
And it was really obvious to him that she is the bad guy, you know, and to the mom, it didn't occur to her that he would have understood that innately.
Nope. I mean,
know?
she literally thought that girl.
Oh, she's a little girl, poor little girl. I'm going to ignore the fact that everyone that had anything to do with her wants to kill themselves or did, you know, including all the fucking animals and all the dead bodies that have already happened because of her and because of that tape.
Her fucking niece.
You know? Yeah.
I mean, for half the movie, she's trying to figure out why the mom has something to do with it, right? I mean, that's another mystery aspect, right? Red herrings left and right, you know? She's like Agatha Christieing all over this movie. But,
well, she's really self-satisfied, you know, with her journalistic ability. And you get that from moment one. And that was very intentional on the filmmaking part.
Or the way she talks to her boss. I would never talk to my boss that way, even though I hate him.
You're fired. No, I'm not. No, you're fired. No, I'm not. Go away.
Punctilious prick. You like the alliteration? She's like, go away. I'm cooking too good of a story.
Yeah. But that false ending really did subvert the horror trope in a new and interesting way that the American audiences just weren't used to. And I think that we take for granted when we look back at it now.
That's true. I mean, and the thing is like, this is a good false ending with a twist that is believable and like, it's not as shocking as things like
The
Sixth
It's
Sense.
not an obvious or important twist. It's literally just the characters understanding what's actually happening.
Right. It is the ending of the movie, you know? And like, I wasn't shocked by it. For those reasons. I was shocked for other reasons.
It doesn't feel like a Shyamalan intentional fuck you to the audience.
Right.
You know what I mean? Which The Sixth Sense kind of is. As enjoyable or good as it is, you know, they intentionally keep things from the audience versus the perspective of this woman. You know, she's trying to find things out and she's using the heuristics, the rules of thumbs about children, you know, and about what her own horror, you know, savviness might be in this universe. Is she, you know, horror movie savvy? You know, genre, whatever they call it, what? Genre savvy. And, you know, and she thinks she is, but she's not.
I mean, and by God, we all kind of did too when we were watching this. We're like,
she did exactly what the American audiences would have expected her
to do. You know? That's what you're supposed to do. You find the body of the person, you put it to rest, right? It's very Christian, you know?
Yeah.
You have something in your notes here that we haven't touched on yet, but I want to make sure that we do since it's here. But you said The Grudge did this too, right?
Yeah.
Upending a horror trope. So
normally you can just leave a haunted house, right? But not in The Grudge. It doesn't care if you're in daylight, on a bus, or wherever the fuck. You're fucked.
And this is what J-horror is to its core, right? It's just like something happens to you and you can't stop it. You know, it is
can't rely on
inevitable.
normal conventions of thinking, oh, I'm in the daylight or I'm in public or anything else. It does not give a shit.
I mean, movies like Pulse, movies like Ju-on, movies like Ringu, right? I mean, like everyday situations, people are like dying and they're being like subjected to whatever curse or ghost or whatever has befallen them, right? And it's just very everyday and just truly, truly fucking frightening.
Well, it just reminds me of also like Alterado's Terrified, right?
Yeah.
The things I like best about that. You cannot rely on your normal conventions because we do not understand what's happening here. We're scratching at the surface, and that's part of the story is that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And none of these people have the answers. They're all just like, you know, highfalutin doctors or psychologists from these rando universities or something, or they're just like writing these books and they're trying to figure these things out, and they're all fucking dying because they, you know, of essentially their own hubris.
Yeah. I love the ending of this movie, though. So let's talk about some of these moments so we can get to that.
Yeah. So to me, basically everything with Naomi Watts and the kid, I love how professional their relationship is.
What a good way to describe it.
You know, and how easily and well established it's set up, that dynamic with like the little details on how self-satisfied she is with herself for her journalistic skills that actually amount to nothing in the, you know, in the end, other than saving her son, barely by happenstance. She's not really the best person, and I love that for us.
She's really not. She's not a good person in this movie, right? And there are often times where I will find a character that is kind of this unlikable on paper, right? And just it will ruin the movie for me. I'm like, she's not likable. But she is. She's still likable to me because she's so unlikable.
I like there's also a lot of subtext in this movie, right? Everything that's not said. Like she's, you know, her ex or whatever's helping her with the video. As soon as his like new girlfriend comes along, that's when she kind of shuts down.
Oh, yeah.
And then she snaps at him. She bites his head off at the elevator for no reason. She's like, this is the part where you said that thing, you flake out. And I was like, you're the one that left. He was helping you.
That's right.
He offered to continue to help you.
And she's throwing a fit.
Yeah,
she's like, this is where I tell you to grow up.
Right. And so it's like the audience is now tempted to remain on her side or just really kind of get educated that this person is really kind of all about herself.
And I love how, like, you talked about visual storytelling, and I feel like this goes along with acting too. I think actors can convey a lot about past or like interpersonal relationships just based on their actions and body language and sometimes dialogue. But like in this particular movie, it's clear they have a history, right? And that truth bomb about Aiden being their son is not quite that shocking as they make it out to be.
No, and I don't think they were. I don't know that they were trying to. Maybe they were. I don't know that. Why would they think the audience really cares? It's just something that, you know, makes people raise their eyebrows a little bit, adds a little bit of oomph, interest, you know, in the moment. But
there's a lot of clarity in the way that these three main characters interact with each other that show you like just the level of history they have.
It's super distinctive.
Yeah.
Right?
And how
like,
involved they are with each other.
I feel like I have a very good feeling of who this character is. And all three of those characters really are.
Really, for real.
And I really wholeheartedly disagree that these characters aren't fleshed out. Like, I feel like they're doing a huge amount of economy with a little bit of script and a lot of subtext and visual storytelling that's going on.
I feel like even some of the smaller characters in this script are kind of fleshed out.
Really the babysitter. Well. I thought she was great.
Yeah. Well, Sarah Rue? Hell yeah. Fuck. I love her. She's great on Popular. I mean, like everyone. I mean, like her sister does a really good job with very little to do in this movie. Like she starts the entire fucking investigation, you know? And it was like that conversation that gives you that first like glimpse into what the face looks like after you've seen Tamara, you know?
Yeah.
Like some of the really, really scary moments. Even the doctor, you know, Brian Cox, we've already said, is barely in the movie, but I feel like they don't have to do a bunch for you to get all their backstory. You know exactly how they feel at every single time.
And even when they're talking about other things, like he's in the house and he's talking about his work and he's like, as soon as something breaks, another thing needs fixing.
Right.
You know, he's talking about other things and like his illusions get more clear that he's talking about the Samara situation and his past. And it just really feels almost more real world because he's not going to explain in some sort of, you know, M. Night Shyamalan heavy exposition moment, explaining the plot. They don't really sit around explaining the plot like that, except for one moment where it's kind of going into the flashback of what happened to Samara when she holds on to her body in the well.
Well, we kind of need that anyway.
We do, and it doesn't bother me.
It doesn't bother me at all. You know, and I feel like we need that flashback because that kind of like shows more of what the video is showing us already.
I wish it had been kind of more intermixed with the video, so you really get that video was stream of consciousness from Samara.
Yeah, that would have helped me a lot back in 2002 when I would have realized she had some sort of psychic ability to make a tape with her mind.
Almost like extended scenes or transitory scenes within the video.
Yeah.
To the real life memories of her would have been more interesting.
Like some sort of like quick flash.
Not more interesting, maybe.
But helpful.
Yeah. And maybe it would have been too heavy-handed then. I don't know.
Maybe.
Whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, this movie is what it is, so it's fine.
Other moments, the original opening death seems cheesy now with its like Dolby shock of her face or whatever, but I remember in the theater like jumping and really being kind of disturbed by the makeup they had done.
Yeah, no, I think it's truly frightening what they do to Amber Tamblyn right there in that closet. Because, I mean, like, all we see when she dies is like water and then like a really quick zoom to her eyeball, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, she looked like she had been a corpse for a long time. And I was like, this is when the makeup department and the script have a mismatch.
Yeah.
Right? Because the mom's talking about it. They don't know. I've sent her to like her body to like everyone and they've all done tests and no one can really explain why her heart stopped. And like, no one's mentioning that she looked like, I don't know, like a fucking gutted Muppet that had been in the sun for 5 years. Like,
I mean, that's what you would look like maybe after 7 days in a well. I don't know. But like, yeah, you're right. Because she's like, I spent 4 hours on the internet. You know, and nobody now you could spend 4 minutes on the internet and get probably as much information, if not more. But, you know, that quick cut to I saw her face and then snap, you know, you see it. And it's not as brief as when you see Noah's face at the end. Like, that's really fucking quick. But I don't know. Like I said in the fucking synopsis, it looks like the most horrific fucking orgasm face of all time.
Yeah, and I feel like if they all really looked like that from that makeup department, like
people would
have connected those fucking murders, you know?
I know. They'd be like, why are all these people dying with this horrible face? We don't need Naomi Watts to do this. Like somebody could have done it like from a much higher up news outlet.
It's all Margaret Thatcher naked on a cold day.
What a very specific mental image that brings.
They saw the video. So that goddamn horse scene. And I was like, how did they do that? Because it looks so real. There's no CG there, as far as I can tell.
No, it looks real.
That horse looks like it is falling off, like hit its leg on the ledge. And then topples over and lands in the water. And then you see, of course, the blood, right? Which is separated. Huge edit cut, right? You know, they're running across the boat to the back to see what happens, you know, but apparently the horse's dive into the water was simulated by filming the animal actually jumping over a low rail in front of a green screen. Okay. And then they kind of cut it out and flipped it in such a way with a moving camera to where it looked just like it had been filmed like that. And then, of course, they shot, you know, some of the horse swimming. And that's it, right? But it looks so real because it's all in camera. You know, even though that was green screened, it was done in such a way that even back then just looked amazing.
I love this moment in the movie. And I don't know what. First of all, because it's both infuriating and fascinating to me. So my favorite camera shot in this entire movie is the close-up of the horse's eye. I just fucking love that. Right, where you kind of see Naomi Watts' reflection in it. And I was just like, oh,
it's also from the intercut with the video.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those references, right? And I was just like, oh my God, it looks so good. And then it's simultaneously infuriating to me because Naomi Watts, again, super full of herself and can't back off. It's her character. She goes to pet the horse and the horse is like having none of it right away. And she pets it 2 more fucking times.
Yeah, she's like, calm down. I just want to self-soothe. It's nothing to do with you.
She keeps petting the horse until it jumps out and then dies. I was just like, lady, maybe sometimes you need to back off. Come on.
Yeah, I just feel like she's like backing away from the ledge. You know, it's like, well, that was rough.
Yep.
Cappuccino?
She's like, sorry about your horse. Oh, we're at the island. They should have had at least a couple moments of her like saying she's sorry to that little girl.
Well, I'm telling you, this movie runs at such a fast pace. There's a lot of connective tissue that could be there, like if it was a miniseries or something. Right?
I mean, there's a lot. And maybe like these series that have already been made, you know, are worth the watch. You know, I mean, they have to be.
I don't know if this scene was in the book. I
really want to read the book now.
Yeah. I want to watch the original Ring that came out before Ringo.
Yes.
Because it's supposed to be the most book accurate, but I don't know.
I may need to save that until after I read the book.
But it's probably a lot more like low budget, you know, so it's like a paper mache horse. I don't know.
So my only experience reading like Japanese fiction that later turned into a Japanese horror movie, a J-horror movie, is Audition. And the novel Audition is, to me, again, it's far superior to the movie audition.
God, I would like to know which other J-horrors came from books. I wonder if like Tale of Two Sisters, or is that Korean?
That's Korean. But I mean, like Asian horror in general, it could have, I wonder if Ju-on did even. And also the thing is that like Japanese culture, and I'm not an expert on this by any means, and I know we have a patron who is, or at least knows more about it. Like I feel like a lot of Japanese horror, Asian horror is built upon like myth, right?
Yeah.
And like urban legend.
The Grudge actually could have come out of, just like I Know What You Did, last summer, stuff like that. It came out of something else. It feels like it's a Suzuki novel, but it's actually maybe not based on anything. And it's actually came out of how popular The Ring was. And so they're doing something else that's also based on those spirits. And I have some information about those types of spirits coming up.
Oh, and some fun facts?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What other moments in this movie do you like?
Goddamn fly.
That goddamn fly.
On the TV screen.
When she's like backing up.
It's creepy, right?
It is.
Like she's on pause or whatever, and she's trying to like...
And she just plucks it.
Yeah. And you can see its little wing twitch, even though it's paused and stuff. I was like, Jesus, that still kind of creeps me out.
I'm telling you, everything about that video, that fucking video is just...
When she's coughing up that goddamn like...
Electrode.
Yeah,
because you think it's like hair or something like
yeah.
that.
And it's like yarn. I'm like, whoa.
I mean, that's an extended scene. I feel like she's retching for quite some time. And I'm like, just take it out already. God. But
rip it out.
The video in this movie is truly, truly frightening. It's very, very off-putting. And I feel like if I were watching that or if someone put that on, I would never make it to the end of it. I'd be like, nope, I'd walk out of the room.
I turned it into a VHS and I left it for my sister. Like, yeah.
I love it.
I copied it and I did some fuckery with that.
You're a good brother.
I am.
But finally, I think we would be remiss.
I also called her cell phone and left her a message when I knew she wouldn't be able to answer. And I did it from like a different phone number. Because at the time, I think I worked at like Singular Wireless.
Okay.
Right? So I did it from a different phone number and I was like, 7 days. And I knew she was going to go see it that night. And so she had listened to the voicemail before she.
I fucking love it. It's amazing. I need that kind of relationship with my brother. He would have figured it out though.
Yeah. And lastly, Samara coming out of the TV. Like that's one of the most scary and shocking reveal moments I've seen in the theater up to that point. But now it seemed kind of tired, which is sad. But it was such a good moment in the theater.
It really was.
And it still looked good for years and years. But now
I think it looks good now.
It's still just like it's almost like it's trying to do this Matrix camera. Yeah. Like it's just like moving the camera around and it's just like doing this like normally what it would have been a static effect. No pun intended.
But intended.
Yeah, it still looks good. It's just a little hokey now, I guess.
I think it's still kind of effective. Yeah. Like I will say that on my second rewatch,
it's her jump, like the fast forward jump that she does up to him. That's what scared most people, I think.
Oh, when he like looks at her directly and then
no, like he's backing away because she's crawling out. She stands up. He's backing away slowly, and then she like fast forwards.
Oh,
like there's a little glitch in the static of her because she looks all black and white and staticky. And she just jumps forward like it's lightning or something. And she's right next to him. And that's what makes him fall back before her hair parts. And that's when like I was watching this with my sister and like she jumped out of her skin. And of course I remembered that scare.
It's a good, effective scare. I think it's still effective. Like I will say that on my second rewatch of this movie for the podcast, I had the benefit of having a gummy. And I didn't on that first watch.
Do you remember watching it in the theater though?
Yeah, I was fucking terrified.
People started screaming in the theater when that happened.
I don't remember anyone screaming. They may have.
When she started coming out of the TV, people were screaming in my theater.
Like squirmed and like jumped a little bit, but I was just like, it was really, really fucking scary.
It was a cool effect. We hadn't had like such effects laden stuff like that.
I mean, because anything shocking in this movie, that was the most, because I felt like something was going to happen with the TV, but I didn't think she was going to fucking come out of it, What's sad really is how quickly it was imitated. And a lot of the tropes from this movie are not original, right? But like quickly after this, we got a flood of movies. We're still getting them today. I mean, like that movie that we saw at that horror movie convention that we got that angry phone call from that director is essentially the same fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like he took the
Very
Ring.
J-horror.
Yeah. And just made it something else,
Well, you could say Talk to Me is very much like The Ring or like It Follows in a way,
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot more originality in Talk to Me than some other of these copies that we've seen.
And more power to them to evolve versus mimic.
That would be the distinction.
Yeah.
So, but still, a singular fucking horror moment.
Yeah.
Her coming out of the television. You have some fun facts for me?
Yes, I have some fun facts for you.
Okay.
So, several high-profile actresses were offered the lead role, including Gwyneth Paltrow, Jennifer Connelly, and Kate Beckinsale.
Well, Jennifer Connelly got her a chance to do some J-horror American remake.
She saw how good it was, and I guess went and did Dark Water, which it's all right. Although I heard, I don't know how true this is, that Jennifer Love Hewitt was also talked to about it, but she did not want to put herself in a situation where she would become a scream queen and locked into that.
Stupid. She should have.
Yeah.
She went on to do fucking Ghost Whisperer.
Right. Yeah.
Come on now.
Want.
I don't see really. I mean, I could see Gwyneth Paltrow, I guess, doing this a little bit, but I feel like they really got the right one with Naomi Watts.
So this next one is very interesting to me because I don't have further context, and maybe I need a DVD with extras because I used to have the DVD and I remember watching them, but I don't remember anything about this. Chris Cooper, which is a big time actor, played a murderer in 2 scenes meant to bookend either side of the film, but was ultimately cut. And I don't know for what reason.
There was a murderer?
Yes.
Was it like a subplot or just?
I don't know. I'm assuming.
I need to know more about
maybe
this.
He was a big red herring or something.
I really am intrigued by that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
But it was cut, and so I don't know. But Chris Cooper is a big deal. So I don't know.
He's an excellent actor.
Well, actually, listeners, if you know the story about that, if it's lost to time somewhere, it's in a really obvious place, and we just didn't do enough due diligence, let me know.
I mean, I have the DVD, and I don't remember that being a part of the deleted scenes.
But theoretically, there was cut. I don't know if it's actual available deleted scenes anywhere.
Huh.
So I'd love to know what that's about. Maybe it has something to do with the book. So the tree with the fiery red leaves featured in the movie is a Japanese maple. The fruit of this tree is known as Samara.
Oh.
The type of ghost that Samara and her Japanese incarnation Sadako is based on is the mythological Onryo, a Japanese ghost that manifests after dying in the grip of a powerful rage, sound familiar, and returns as a very pale and physical ghost to seek vengeance on the living. Samara's psychic abilities are known as nincha, which is a form of spirit photography that enables someone to burn images from their mind onto any solid surface just by thinking about them, explaining why her adopted parents suffered nightmares and bad visions. This is also how she burned her images onto the videotape that Katie and her friends used to copy a sports game on TV.
And it makes sense now that I know she had this ability, right?
Yeah, so it's like The Grudge, because remember, that's exactly what the type of spirit The Grudge was, except the difference is Samara was a fucking psychic. So until Stephen King's It from 2017, this movie was the highest grossing horror remake in history, with a total worldwide gross of over $249 million.
Jesus Christ. And we have to do It too. That's a huge horror blockbuster.
Right. So my last one. In September 2019, The Grudge from 2020 director Nicholas Pesci expressed interest in a crossover film between The Grudge and the American The Ring film series akin to Sadako versus Kyoki from 2016. But they actually want to do Samara versus The Grudge from the American version.
We had an episode, I don't even know how fucking long ago, where I said Sudoku versus something or other, right? And some listener commented and she was just like, I started laughing when you called her Sudoku.
Sadako, yeah. Kayako?
Anyway.
Sadako versus Kayako. I don't know. I'd be interested in watching that anyway.
I would. I mean, I would watch the Japanese.
I would think that the Ring one would win. Sadako.
I don't know. I mean, like the fucking Grudge.
She's a psychic. She's a psychic. So she's already has special powers above being just an angry rage ghost.
I don't know. I feel like some of the deaths in The Grudge were a hell of a lot worse than this one.
Yeah, but they had other like rage ghosts too. It was a multitude of rage ghosts.
There was a little boy and that
There was a little boy and the cat that merged.
Yeah.
And the wife, which killed people, but then there was also the husband.
Mm-hmm. God, I really want to watch The Grudge.
I don't remember. I thought maybe it was her memory of the guy and that he didn't have a ghost, but she did. I don't know. I think he killed them both and whatever. Anyway, we'll have to watch those.
We do. And we're going to do The Grudge next summer. We're putting it on the docket. Those were fun. Really fun, actually. And I'm super interested to know about that Chris Cooper thing.
Really?
But we have some questions that we need to ask about The Ring, like we do about all the movies that we deep dive into on the Film Flamers. And we're not going to start with this is a horror movie because it clearly is. But Chris, would you have watched that fucking video in the first place?
Yeah.
You would have watched it all the way through?
If I'd known what it was beforehand?
Yeah.
Or once it started playing, watch it. Keep watching it.
Both. So would you have sought it out? If you thought it was some sort
Sought it out, maybe. Watched it if I started watching it, yes.
Okay, so if I started watching it, I would not have finished it. I would have turned that shit off. It would have scared me too much. So I feel like I would have survived. But also, I've never, even at like sleepovers or whatever, I've never done like Bloody Mary, stuff like that. I'm too fucking chicken shit to do that.
I've done that by myself.
Nope, I can't do it, won't do it. Will stop, always stop. I don't know. So I feel like
I'm the opposite.
Yeah, if this thing existed, I would survive every fucking day. There's no way in the world I would get that far.
I just, I'm angry at reality for not being more interesting. And so I will dare it to, make me wrong.
Despite the consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to live.
This world needs a fucking monster.
That's right. And at least I'll have a story to tell.
To unify the nations.
Be like, do you know how my friend died? To unify the nations.
We need... Come on, look at ID4. Come on. It works.
Okay.
Just like COVID. Wait.
Oh. Were you scared while watching The Ring?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think I was scared this time around too. That got me helped.
Not as much this time, not really.
I mean, there are some moments that are just genuinely creepy.
Yeah, there's a lot of tension and creepiness in this movie, and it still works. It's still quite effective. But the jump scares and the Dolby shocks and stuff like that, they wear off the first time if I have a good memory
they're
of
only
the film.
effective once,
Yeah.
So. Well, and that's not always the case. There are some that are effective throughout time. Exorcist 3 is an example.
Oh, fuck me.
But like after the first time you see it, it's a lot less. But yeah, I was scared watching this movie. Mm-hmm. So out of 5 stars, what would you rate The Ring?
I gave it a 4-star.
So initially, on my first rewatch for this podcast, I gave it 3.5 stars because I was a little bored. And just like Ebert, I thought a lot of it was kind of ridiculous. And I was like, now what? And especially with that fucking psychic ability thing, I was like, hey, I was flabbergasted I didn't pick up on that earlier. So maybe I was just mad at myself. And I was like, what the fuck is going on in this movie? What? And then when I watched it again.
What did you think the tree was from? Like on the wall?
I don't know. Like I said, I just not ask questions. I was like, all this is happening and I'm just going to go with it.
Okay.
That's how I watch movies in the first place. I'll just get lost in it. And I'm just like, it's fine. I don't have to question anything. But when I watched it the second time, I was like, okay, I'm down with it. I dig it. I was really feeling the tension a lot more. I'm glad that I had that knowledge that she could do this with her fucking mind. And I was like, it's all falling into place now. And I was
Day
like,
16 of carving this tree into the wall with my papa's pocket knife. I don't know what you're thinking.
I used one of the horse's hooves to draw this tree. Either way, I'm with 4 stars as well.
Yeah.
I think this movie has a really good pop culture moment. I think it's good for horror.
Yeah, it's lost some oomph based on its age, and some of the tropes that have been taken from it and ran with by others, and so they're taking a little bit of the steam of it, but it's still a classic for a reason.
It is.
And it's still very effective and shot so beautifully. It's at least a 4.
The score is really good, and also I feel like it's important, Yeah. Even for people who don't think this movie is good, they have to say it's important. It ushered in an entire subgenre of American horror based on other people's horror movies.
Yeah.
And it could have possibly introduced a whole sea of people to horror films and horror ideas and horror tropes that they would not have known otherwise.
Well, it allowed us to segue out of the Scream meta horror that was a comeback for horror and into this new this new world of things like It Follows and things like that.
Exactly.
And so it really helped us like get past like this, we were already in a rut before Scream. And then like people tried to keep making Screams until about 2000, ran out of steam. J-horror came along and it allowed us to really kind of evolve and move forward.
That's right.
Right.
I feel like American horror today owes a lot to international horror alone, but mostly international horror that comes from that part of the globe.
Yeah.
Right. So it's an important movie. Finally, who's the hottest guy in the ring?
Martin Henderson.
Duh. Right.
I was like, he should play Gambit. And then I actually read that Gore Verbinski, whatever, was actually contracted to do a Gambit movie.
Really?
Yeah, but he dropped out in like 2018 or something.
God, I wonder if Martin Henderson would have played him. Anyway, he's fucking dreamy in this. Mm-hmm. He's like the epitome of the guy that I would have gone after in the early 2000s. You know what I mean? He's got the haircut. He's kind of a smart ass, whatever.
Yeah, he looks like the character from Lost. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that was just my type back then.
Well, I don't know. That long hair. Like,
yeah, it's the long hair parted in the middle, like very chiseled face.
Guy, Scott Speedman.
Yes. It was very WB.
The sweetest thing. Everything from 2000, 2005. Just let me list all those actors.
All the actors.
Maybe that's why, because he looked like kind of dime a dozen, but he's a really great actor. And
he is a good actor. And he's just super good looking. Also, there's not a lot of options in this movie. What, the kid? The guy who checked her in at the inn?
Yeah.
The grieving father? No. I mean, clearly Martin Henderson. But he's super hot in this, and he's really super fucking hot in X. Yeah. I don't know.
Brian Cox.
Or Brian Cox. I like the way you say his name in the beginning of this episode. I almost commented on it because your emphasis was in such a way you're like, Cox. And I'm like, this is clearly a gay podcast. Well, I think that just about wraps up our conversation on The Ring. As always, we would like to know what you guys think about the movie and our conversation, especially if you know about that Chris Cooper fun fact. You can tell us on social media at The Film Flamers on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and now on Threads.
Wow, Threads.
Since Twitter is sort of a dying wasteland.
It kind of is.
It really is. Kind of. So sad. Threads is here.
You can also email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com. Or call our hotline at 972-666-7733. I want you to come down my well.
Before you die, look at my ring. Just come down my well.
Before you die, you'll see the ring. Looks like chewed up bubblegum.
You ever seen my ring? It looks a lot more pristine than that. Guys, we have more blockbustery content coming out for you this month. We are going to be covering The Ring 2 next week, so stay tuned for that. I completely forgot that Naomi Watts was in this movie.
Aiden comes back too.
That's right. For some reason, I thought it was Julia Stiles, and that's a different sequel altogether.
No.
There was a remake of The Omen.
Yes, it was.
I'm confusing this with lots of movies. Yep.
Thanks.
And then over on Patreon, TBD. Maybe we're going to talk about Ringu. Maybe we're going to give you a last-minute poll. So stay tuned for that. And if you're not part of the Patreon family, head over to patreon.com/thefilmflamers. Join the family, vote in polls, get all of our bonus content.
All right, Robert. Well, I think it's time for us to go and prepare our rings for
someone to come down them.
That would be our wells.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Either way, I'll have some sweet dreams. That could be my favorite scandalous phone line.
What is it called? When it's on the outside of the ring?
A diaphragm?
Cream pie? The Ring 3 cream pie.
I'm so vanilla when it comes to sex. I don't even know what they're called. I have no idea.
I don't know either. If we said something horribly offensive, please.
All I know is Donkey Punch.
Wow.